Hi everyone, it's Nadia, Jake, this is Buddy Boy, Sedona Girl, and Babu is playing with his toy right now. Today we're going to talk about The Exorcist Believer, sequel to the original Exorcist, which came out
Reboot sequel,
which came out in
70s. That's 76, I think.
So, non-spoiler first, I think it's really hard for a reboot to be as good or even be anything similar to the original
Here we go.
Because it was kind of like the first of its time, right? Mm-hmm. And so it was like any other horror film, and I was laughing for a lot of it. It wasn't scary, and I'm a scaredy cat.
No.
And I did try to hide, but I was smiling a lot of it, and I was like, this is kind of fun. This is kind of like The Evil Dead.
You guys don't understand. When we saw Evil Dead Rise, when we saw Smile this year, she dug her nails into my arm so hard. She was so scared. She gets so scared at movies. That didn't happen once.
Movies.
I wasn't. I mean, it was almost nice because I wasn't in pain at all. But
wow,
I was just amazed because usually you get scared, but this movie is not scary.
No, it was not scary. I mean, the original was scary, but this one is not scary. It was funny parts in there, really trying to recreate what was originally made. But like I said, there's a problem with that inherently, I think, now, because again, that was the first of its kind in its time. But now it's been recreated, or there's been so many other films that try to recreate The Exorcist that doing this is not going to like make this movie stand out.
We just saw The Pope's Exorcist, which had all the same cliches.
It's not going to make it stand out. I would say scary factor, probably like 4 out of 10, 3 out of 10. I'm rating it a 3, like a person who goes to scary movies and doesn't get that scared is probably going to rate it 1 out of 10, like you. Humor factor, 4.5 out of 10, because you could just laugh at the way that it's not like it wasn't intending it to be funny, but it was funny in the way that it was executed. This
movie was garbage. I mean, first off, like it just was very bad, and I think it was kind of poorly made. And look, this is directed by David Gordon Green, who has a very interesting career. He's made comedies, he's made indie dramas, but recently he's known for the Halloween reboot series. I'm kind of a defender of them somewhat. I like the Halloween 2018. Halloween Kills is fine. Not a masterpiece, but it's fine. Mm-hmm. And I think Halloween Ends was an interesting movie in the Halloween franchise. I'm not saying they're amazing, perfect movies, but they were fine, especially as Michael Myers movies, This is a different beast. This is fundamentally such a different franchise, such a different concept. The original is a masterpiece, just as a film. Not, it's rare that you get horror movies that are universally praised and beloved, and The Exorcist made a ton of money. But like you were saying, all of the sequels and movies that were trying to capture on The Exorcist have just been garbage because, and I think this is the key, the people who make them don't really believe in it. Like, I really think that what makes The Exorcist work is it's a drama about a priest who's losing his faith, and it's about a mother and her daughter. It's a very simple story. Most of the movie's very quiet and dramatic, and that's what makes the horror so real and believable. Most Exorcist movies that we see now, they're focused on, there's words being drawn in her stomach, and there's the green vomit, and the head spins around, and it's like these are tropes. She's crawling on the ceiling now. Like, these are tropes that we've seen in all these movies. Really, what are they going to bring to this new Exorcist film? And it just seemed like David Gordon Green wasn't the right type of person for this. What were they thinking? They spent a ton of money. Universal spent so much money. It was like $400 million on the rights for The Exorcist.
Do you think the Deceiver, the third one,
I don't think it's going to get made.
You don't think so?
I don't think they're going to do the sequel because this one, well, maybe they have to in order to, since they spent so much money on it. But they were coming out of the gate with doing a trilogy, and I just think that they didn't have the script ready. It comes across very sloppy. Like, the filmmaking seems sloppy. It seems like either there was stuff moving around in the script during the editing process based on the way it's edited. It's just like really choppy, really fast moving. Like, it's bizarre. There's a lot of ADR, lines, especially
line up as well.
Especially Ellen Burstyn, who I have no idea why she's in this movie. All of these requel movies, they have to have the person who comes in who's like, I'm Han Solo, I'm Jamie Lee Curtis, I'm from the older franchise, I'm here to bring the new viewers in. But it's like, Ellen Burstyn, what is she doing in this film? Like, she really had nothing to do.
The trailer made it look like she was going to be a main person in
yeah.
there. And when you look at the actual movie, she's probably there for 10 minutes, and her scenes could have been completely cut out. It didn't really serve her purpose except for what you were saying. Like, I agree, like bringing old viewers to watch this movie.
If she weren't in this, the 15 minutes she's in this, it would have just been another generic, bland possession film.
But she didn't have really a big purpose. Like, and that's the thing.
I can't wait to get into spoilers.
Oh my God, yeah. And I think it fails in that right there. I think like having 2 kids who are possessed could have been interesting, but I don't think it was. I mean, before we get into spoiler, I would rate it probably a 4 out of 10, 4.5 out of 10.
Yeah, I'd give it like a 3 or 4. Like, and this thing is cut to within an inch of its life. It feels like the filmmakers, the studio, was kind of embarrassed. Like, they're almost like, we need to get things moving and make it exciting. And it's like, that's not what makes these movies. Like,
well, it honestly felt like when I was growing up, there were certain movies that were made for TV.
Yeah.
Low budgeted, kind of like, you know, because it's Halloween season, like, you know, Lifetime channel or like one of those antenna channels that you'd, you know, watch these types of films, and it felt like that. So
I will say I thought the performances were good. The guy who played the dad was great. I know he's in Hamilton. I thought he was good and interesting. I wish they gave him more to do. It seemed like a frustrating role for him, you know?
I have a big criticism about movies like this, but I have to get in the spoiler section.
Like, there are some sort of interesting themes they could have explored. Some. I thought the girls were good. They did good doing their possession stuff. But once we got, especially the second half of the movie, first half, there were some interesting stuff. Just kind of like the slow build was okay. But then once it went into, okay, we're doing the possession, we got to do an exorcism, it was all over the place. Tons of characters that like are just walking in that are suddenly supposed to be important that we've barely met or introduced.
Is that spoilers?
No.
Oh, okay.
There's an exorcism in the Exorcist movie?
No, I mean,
guys.
Like so many people walking in. Into the exorcism, like, you know.
No, I just mean like in terms of there's so many new characters in the second half that we barely get to know and meet or care about, that it just becomes like, okay, let's just wait for this to be done because you know all the beats that they're going to hit. There's a couple of different things that they do, but they're barely there, barely interesting, and then the movie's over. It's like such a short movie, and it's weird. It's rare that I complain that a movie's too short, but this really,
well, I think it's because they're trying to do the deceiver. So they're making they're putting a film into the perspective that they want to have another film.
But there's nothing at the end of this movie that made me go, ooh, I really want to see what happens next.
There was something for me.
There was. I'm just like, okay, all right, great. That's what happened, you know.
It left some questions that were unanswered. So I actually do want Deceiver to be made because of that, but yeah.
Do you want to get into spoilers?
Yes.
All right. Can I actually start with spoilers real quick? Yes. Because there's something I really want to talk about.
Hey, maybe you'll say what I want to think, because I feel like you and I are on a similar page then.
The opening of the film
okay.
is set in Haiti during the horrific real-life Haiti earthquakes that occurred. And that basically sets up the story, because the mom dies, unborn baby is saved. This sets up the story. And there's a big like CGI set piece of this destruction in Haiti. I thought this was a horrible way to start your film, this horror franchise. Like, it just honestly, and I know like some people are like, what, like, but to me it felt sort of exploitative of like a real life tragedy. I don't know. It kind of seems like starting imagine they started this movie by the mom was in 9/11 and died, and they did a whole recreation of 9/11. Like another tragedy. What is the point of anchoring it in this when it had so little, the actual real life tragedy had so little to do with the rest of the film? It's just like they needed a way for her to die. Like, I don't know.
There are movies that do that. Like, for example, 9/11, like Remember Me by Robert Patterson.
That's it. Robert Pattinson. It ended that way, but that also has been criticized because it's like, what the hell was that even there for? But imagine like a Halloween movie starting like that, like in 9/11, just to set up this character.
It didn't have to be like Haiti. It could have been like a generic place.
It could have been a car accident. It could have been another.
Or it could have just been an earthquake in like a place that didn't account for real life events. No, it could have just been a fan made.
And if some people are
not fan made,
if some people haven't seen the movie and they're like, oh, it's probably not that bad. Like, they do a full scale recreation, people dying in the streets, buildings collapsing. Like, I think that's really inappropriate to do for your schlocky horror film. It just felt very, very poor taste. Anyways, that was my first impression of the film, and that left a bad taste in my mouth. So
I think that like it was interesting how they made the dad choose like, hey, you can save the baby or you can save the mom, and we first think that he chose the baby, which is, you know, like, oh, you're just gonna let your wife die, but then it turns out he did choose his wife, and at the end I thought it was nice how the writers brought it all together, where the devil makes them choose like between the girls, and of course that's ultimately how Catherine dies, is that her dad makes a choice, kills her in turn because devil lies, but then Angela's dad doesn't make any choice. There is a little bit of that like coming in full circle because of that, and I did like that how they tied it all together. I don't mind it for myself because I'm a scaredy cat, but I think for a horror film, they kind of choose if you intentionally want to make it funny or if you want to make it horror. I think a lot of jump scares weren't really jump scares. They were kind of just like, okay. But I also felt like it would be interesting to see Angela and Catherine going to hell or how they got possessed, instead of kind of showing clips of it at the very end. I think there was one where Angela's dad was trying to go to the cave where we saw them before, and there was just a snake or something, you know? But like, it's like kind of like it's building up to possibly be scary, but there's nothing there. So it's a letdown in that way, I think. Also, I thought like half the movie was like completely different than the other half.
Yeah.
Half the movie was missing child.
I thought that was interesting. I was into that.
But it felt like a little weird because of the fact that I didn't know what kind of movie this was. I mean, I knew what kind of movie it was, but it felt like it had almost different themes.
I like that part, the missing child thing, because it felt real, it felt grounded, and it felt like...
But I wish they had kind of like tied it together with horror at the end. Like kind of made it a little bit more of a thing. Because that's what like made this movie stand out from the original, was it had more depth, it had more emotions in there. I couldn't figure out if they wanted to make it scary as the original, or they were just like trying to tell a story that was more generic.
Well,
I also thought one scary thing that not necessarily scary, but I thought it was well executed, was when Catherine was at the church. And she was doing stuff that was inappropriate in front of her siblings. She was walking down the church aisle, and she was saying, the body in the blood, the body in the blood. I thought it was crazy though. Her parents like just kept her home, and they were all like in the kitchen just praying, and it really showed like the difference between Catherine's parents and Angela's dad, because it like the message of the movie in the original was about like a preacher who's lost his faith, kind of trying to rebuild the faith. I think in this movie the message is more about, it doesn't matter what your faith is, like it's not about like necessarily religion, and I did like that part. It's about just like believing. But it got very convoluted.
That's what I want to say, because it
got so convoluted.
The original film, it's super simple. All right, first off, we don't know how she gets possessed. She just possessed. All right, Reagan just gets possessed in the original movie, and that's what's horrifying about it, is that it could just happen to anyone. We see these girls doing some kind of like ritual, trying to communicate with her mom, whatever. So this is something possessed her that way. It's a little less scary, in my opinion. So when they do the possessions, they're rounding up like a bunch of different religions, because the dad isn't like Catholic, you know, and it's like, I get what they're trying to do with the film, because they're like, how do you make an Exorcist film in a world that is increasingly less religious, you know? In the 70s, it makes more sense. Less Christian.
Yeah.
But here it just felt, the way they were trying to do it and the way they were trying to integrate these different religions, it felt extremely corny and incredibly like, what is the logic here? Like, is this a demon?
It wasn't done
like,
in a great way, because it was also like when the lady was like, it's almost like I was born for this, and then it felt like none of that worked.
What is the plan?
It didn't work at all. None of it worked. I didn't even know.
They're just gonna go in there and yell at the demon?
The only reason that I think the only reason why Angela ended up coming out was because Catherine's dad was dumb enough to choose. That was it. I don't think The Exorcist worked at all. And it was so dumb, because it was like, none of these things worked. It was very convoluted. The preacher who came in at the end, who was like not trying to go against, his other bishop or whatever, came back. He ended up getting killed. It's like,
But it's also like, okay, if the demon's able to just twist his head around, like, why can't the demon just do this to the others? And why is it getting defeated by them just yelling like, I believe? Like,
well, and then also the big criticism I have of this film is, and this is not just this film, this is movies like this, is that they use women who get abortion as some kind of trope.
Yeah.
Of like evil attaching themselves to them, and then some literally cannot tell you how much that bothers me. And that happens with stuff like this all the time. Movies are like this, and I just wish they would stop. It's old, it's annoying. Honestly, when I think about that, I would rate this movie 1 out of 10 because it's so overdone and it's so ridiculous and it's so dumb. And also, like, it's like she says, it's like I was born for this. The lady who, you know, was helping Angela and her dad with the exorcism, but then she doesn't do anything. Like, at least have an arc for her to come out and actually defeat the devil. It sounds like the devil got to her because of her past of having an abortion, and like I said, I have no idea what worked at all. The only reason I want a deceiver film was because of the fact that, like, the devil deceived Catherine's dad into thinking that if he chose her, she would live, but ultimately she ended up dying. I kind of want to know, like, what happened to Catherine, if she's alive. I think it would be cool if she came back and she was, like, haunted. Also, because the girl from the original film, as an adult, she came back at the end, and I think it'll be interesting to see if there's a little bit of a doorway for her to go get repossessed now that she's back in it.
I couldn't care less.
I also thought one more annoying thing was how they basically was like, yeah, I haven't talked to my daughter in a year. She doesn't, like, I have no idea if she's, I think that's like so cruel storyline to talk about.
Can we, hold on. Before we get into it, we need to talk about the entire thing because it feels like a separate movie, the actual stuff from the original Exorcist. Out of the blue, he's given this book, and it's written by the Ellen Burstyn character from the original movie, who's like in her 80s and she's living in Florida now. But apparently she wrote a tell-all book about her daughter's experience with an exorcism. And remember, how The Exorcist ends, Reagan doesn't remember anything, and the mom is happy because it's a traumatic thing. Somehow in this universe, her career nosedived or something, and she's like, I need a quick buck writing this book about my daughter. So her daughter hates her and is living in isolation, doesn't know where she is. We're just introduced to this old lady character. There's a ton of really bad ADR lines where she's talking to the main dad and like, oh, well, this is the thing you got to do with evil, blah, blah, blah. For some reason, she just goes with them. And there's this horrible scene. I can't even like get into, like, this is when the movie fully lost me. It was the dumbest thing. They go into the other family's house where they have their possessed daughter. Everything's a mess. And the family's like hiding in the kitchen and the dad's all sobbing in the bathtub. Ellen Burstyn's character just alone, without telling anyone. The other guy doesn't seem to be interested in what's going on. She goes up alone and confronts the possessed girl and gets her eyes stabbed. Then she's in the hospital until the end of the movie.
Well, it's like why was she there?
Was the point
she
of
wasn't
this?
Even part of the original Exorcist.
She wasn't in.
And
no.
so it just felt very convenient again to like try to get people who love the original film to come to watch this film. It's like, okay, we got to have her somewhere. So let's just like, we want some priest or someone who's like wanted to sacrifice their life to be a nun, people to actually perform the exorcist. So we don't want her to do it. So let's just get her eyes to cut out and we'll show like flashbacks of her being connected to it for the deceiver, you know, to make audience wonder and have a cliffhanger about like, ooh, is the original Pazuzu, I think the demon is Pazuzu coming back? Because this demon who possessed the other two girls is a different demon. So to be honest, I want to know, but you know.
And then we get the cameo of her daughter at the very end, and it's supposed to be like an emotional scene, like these characters that are barely in the movie for 2 minutes, like.
Well, again, it's to tie back the original, you know, and stuff, but
it's just amazing how badly this flopped. Like they just really messed up like big time. I don't know. It seems like they could have.
But now they can learn from it because I don't think they've started the next film, and so they can apply these notes and make the next film really great, you know. So I think there's still a chance.
I don't know. I think that it's lost for this. I don't think they're the right people to be making this type of film. I think
people can learn. You know, I like to give people
The Exorcist was lightning in a bottle. It had like just the perfect stuff going for it, and they haven't been able to recreate it. And I don't think they should bother. I don't think they need to. Like, how many times do we need to see a girl get possessed?
I think this would have been a really nostalgic film and really good, but if it wasn't, like, for my perspective, the filmmaker should maybe, I don't think it will be ever as scary as the original, because, you know, movies with these type of themes are done so many times, but I think you could have some nostalgic elements to it, elements that are more wholesome with a little bit of a twist, if they knew what they were doing and if it was well made. You know, I just think that it felt really rushed, and I don't know if that was the director or the writers, you know, because studio films, especially ones that were purchased with that much money, do get a lot of pressure. I don't know, you know, I think it's hard when movies that are this supposed to be this big, it's hard to kind of like say the directing was bad or the writing was bad, because there's a lot of pressure that you get from studios about how it should end and become. Nonetheless, I think we both agree that it didn't work.
Nice try, guys.
Nice try.
All right. Well, thank you for watching, everyone.
Thank you, and we'll talk to you next time.
Talk to you next time. Bye.